My name is Abigail. I am 28 years old, and I am an artist living in New York. Painting is not just what I do. It is who I am. Every morning, I wake up in my small apartment, look at the unfinished canvases leaning against the wall, and tell myself that one day my art will be enough. Enough to pay the bills. Enough to let me breathe without fear. Some months, I almost believe it. When I sell a large painting, life feels generous. I buy fresh food instead of cheap noodles. I walk through the city without counting every dollar in my head. I feel rich, not because I have much, but because I finally have enough. In those moments, New York feels like a city that believes in me. But those months do not come often. Sometimes, 2 or even 3 months pass without a single sale. During those times, my life becomes very small. I eat the simplest meals. I stop meeting friends. I avoid places where money is spent easily. My world shrinks to my apartment and my thoughts. That apartment is my shelter. It is old, cramped, and far from perfect, but it holds my dreams. It is where my paintings are born. It is where I feel safe from the noise of the city. Yet every month, the rent reminds me that passion does not protect you from reality. 3 months ago, I missed my first payment. I told myself it was temporary. Then I missed the second. By the 3rd month, my bank account was completely empty. There was nothing left to move, nothing left to sell. The calendar turned, and I still had no solution. Fear became my constant companion. I stopped answering phone calls. I ignored messages. I stayed inside as much as possible, hoping that if I stayed quiet, the problem might disappear. But problems do not disappear when you hide. They wait. Every sound in the hallway made my heart jump. Footsteps. Voices. The elevator stopping on my floor. And above all, the knock. The knock on the door became my greatest fear. It echoed in my mind even when it did not come. I knew who it would be. Billy, my landlord. A man who had been patient before, but patience has limits. One afternoon, as I stood in front of a blank canvas, trying to paint away my anxiety, the sound finally came. A firm knock. Not rushed. Not angry. Just certain. My heart began to race. I knew this moment could no longer be avoided. I took a deep breath, walked to the door, and slowly opened it. Billy was standing there. Billy stood in the doorway, his coat slightly open, his face tired rather than angry. This surprised me. I had imagined shouting, threats, maybe even the police. Instead, he looked like a man carrying his own worries, not just a landlord collecting money. "Abigail," he said calmly, "we need to talk." I stepped aside and let him in. My apartment suddenly felt smaller with him inside. He did not ask for permission. He looked around quietly, at the canvases, the scattered brushes, the half-finished paintings. His eyes lingered there longer than I expected. "It's been 3 months," he said at last. "I can't wait anymore." "I know," I whispered. Shame burned my face. "Please give me 1 more week. Just 7 days. I have a buyer interested in one of my paintings. I will pay you." Billy sighed. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten me. That made everything worse. "You always say that," he replied. "Next week. Soon. It never comes." He stepped closer. I could smell his cologne. My heart began to beat faster, and I hated myself for noticing. I had always thought Billy was handsome, but I had never allowed myself to think beyond that. I lived alone. I was lonely. And loneliness makes the heart dangerous. "I don't want to throw you out," he said quietly. "But this can't continue." I nodded, unable to speak. My mind was empty, except for fear. Then he asked a question that changed everything. "Isn't there another way to resolve this?" At first, I did not understand. I thought he meant a payment plan. More time. A different arrangement. But his eyes were not on my hands. They were on my lips. The air between us felt heavy, charged. Suddenly, the meaning became clear. I should have stepped back. I should have said no. I should have told him to leave. But instead, I stood there, frozen between panic and desire. 3 months of fear. Years of loneliness. The need to be seen, to be touched, to feel wanted. Billy leaned closer. I did not pull away. The kiss came slowly, almost gently. For a moment, the debt disappeared. The fear faded. I was no longer a tenant. He was no longer a landlord. We were just two lonely people reaching for warmth. We moved toward the bedroom without speaking. That night, I felt safe in his arms. I felt chosen. I felt connected. I told myself this was real, that this was not about money or power. As I lay beside him in the quiet darkness, I believed that something meaningful had happened. I believed we had crossed a line not out of weakness, but out of feeling. I did not think of the rent. I did not think of the consequences. I only thought that maybe, just maybe, I was no longer alone. The morning light felt different when I opened my eyes. It was colder, sharper, as if it carried a truth I was not ready to face. Billy was already awake. He stood near the window, pulling on his shirt, his back turned to me. He did not smile. He did not look at me. For a moment, I waited for him to say something kind. Something simple. A word that would tell me the night before had meant as much to him as it had to me. But the room stayed silent. He finished dressing quickly, avoiding my eyes as if I were a stranger. I have to go, he said, his voice flat. That was all. No explanation. No reassurance. A cold fear settled in my chest. As the door closed behind him, I sat alone on the edge of the bed, holding the sheet tightly in my hands. Doubt rushed in where warmth had been only hours before. Had I imagined everything? Had that night been nothing more than a solution to his problem and a mistake of my own? The next few days passed slowly. I tried to tell myself everything would be fine. Surely the rent issue was over now. Surely he would come back and talk to me properly. I watched my phone constantly, waiting for a message that never came. I continued painting, but my hands felt heavy. The colors no longer comforted me. Every sound in the hallway made me tense, but not with fear this time. With hope. Then, one afternoon, as I walked down the hall to take out the trash, I heard voices near the stairs. Mrs. Smith and Mr. Harper, my neighbors, were standing close together. When they saw me, they fell silent. Their eyes followed me in a way that made my stomach tighten. I smiled politely and tried to walk past them. "That's the girl," Mrs. Smith said quietly to Mr. Harper, not quiet enough. "She pays her rent with her body. It's disgusting." The words struck me like a slap. I froze. My heart stopped beating for a second. The hallway felt suddenly too narrow, too bright, too exposed. I turned and ran back to my apartment, locking the door behind me as if it could protect me from the shame flooding my body. I slid down the door and sat on the floor, shaking. The night I had believed was tender and real now felt dirty and cruel. How did they know? Who told them? Only one answer made sense. Billy. The thought made me sick. Had he spoken about me so easily? Or worse, had he said nothing at all and allowed the rumors to grow? Either way, my trust lay broken on the floor beside me. I had not just lost my sense of safety. I had lost my dignity. Billy returned that evening. I heard his steps before the knock, slow and uncertain, as if he already knew this conversation would not be easy. When I opened the door, he did not smile. His face was tense, his jaw tight, his eyes restless. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, just as he had before, but this time the air between us was cold. "Abigail," he said, lowering his voice, "people are talking." I said nothing. I stood still, my arms crossed, watching him pace the room like a man trapped by his own fear. "The neighbors think I'm treating you differently," he continued. "They say it's because of what happened between us. These rumors are bad for my business." There it was. Not concern for me. Not regret. only his reputation. So that's why you're here, I said quietly. Not to ask how I feel. Not to protect me. But to protect yourself. He avoided my eyes. You need to understand my position. I understand it perfectly, I replied. You are afraid. Billy stopped walking. He turned to face me, his expression hardening. You still haven't paid the rent, he said. That hasn't changed. You can't stay here anymore. The words landed heavily, but instead of breaking me, they cleared something inside me. In that moment, everything became painfully simple. The night we shared had meant nothing to him. To Billy, I was not a woman with feelings. I was a problem to be managed, a risk to be removed. I took a slow breath and looked at him directly. Listen to me carefully, I said. I did not spend the night with you to pay my rent. I was not buying time. I was not selling myself. He opened his mouth to speak, but I raised my hand. I wanted to be with you, I continued. I believed that moment was real. But you are a coward, Billy. You hide behind your business and your reputation because you are afraid of what people say. His face flushed with anger and shame. That's not fair, he muttered. No, I replied. What you did to me was not fair. I turned away and began packing my clothes. Each movement felt heavy, but also strangely calm. I did not beg. I did not cry. I folded my things slowly, carefully, as if reclaiming each piece of myself. Billy watched from the doorway, silent, powerless. When my bag was full, I walked past him. I'm leaving, I said. He did not stop me. As I stepped out of the apartment, pain followed me, but it no longer controlled me. The door closed behind me, and for the first time in months, I felt something stronger than fear. Freedom. 2 months passed. My life no longer looked the way it once had, but for the first time, it felt steady. I moved into a smaller apartment in a quieter part of the city. The rent was lower, the rooms were simpler, and the walls were bare. Yet I slept better there than I ever had before. There was no fear of knocks on the door, no shame hiding in the corners. Only quiet and space to breathe. I worked harder than ever. I painted every day, not to escape reality, but to face it. Slowly, paintings began to sell again. Not many, not quickly, but enough. When I finally had the full amount of money I owed, I sent it to Billy in an envelope through the mail. I did not write a note. I did not ask for forgiveness. I paid the debt for one reason only. My dignity mattered more than anything else. A week later, there was a knock on my new door. When I opened it, Billy stood there, holding the envelope in his hand. He looked different. Smaller. Less certain. You didn't have to pay this, he said. I already told you to move out. Yes, I did, I replied calmly. I did it for myself. He hesitated, then sighed. I made a mistake, he said. I was afraid of the rumors. I handled everything wrong. Can I take you to dinner? Not as your landlord. Just as Billy. For a moment, I felt the echo of who I used to be. Lonely. Hoping. Willing to accept less than I deserved. But that woman no longer lived here. You chose your reputation over me, I said. And I chose myself. His face fell. I don't want dinner with you, I continued. Please leave. Billy stood there for a second longer, then turned away. I closed the door gently but firmly behind him. The sound was quiet, yet powerful. It was the sound of an ending that did not need anger to be complete. As I leaned against the door, I felt something warm settle inside me. Not relief. Not victory. But clarity. I had faced debt, gossip, and betrayal, and I had walked away with the one thing no one could take from me. My dignity. Some people think freedom comes from money or love. I learned that true freedom comes from knowing your worth and refusing to trade it for comfort. The door stayed closed. And I finally felt whole.